Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. What happens when you follow curiosity instead of convention? With my good friend, Frank McKenna. Hi, friends. Welcome to Someone Gets Me. And Frank has taken time out of his busy day to be with us to share some inspiration about what happens when you allow your curiosity and your creativity to lead you out of the box of convention. So Frank and I have known each other for a while. And one thing I love about Frank more than anything is that he is a man that can say what he really thinks without all the fluffy words. And I love that. So you're going to love listening to him. So get your tea and be ready to be inspired by somebody who has looked at the conventional world and said, well, that's not completely for me. Let me show you even a more amazing way to live. So Frank, welcome to Someone Gets Me, and thanks for taking time out of your busy day to be here with me.
Well, certainly, Diane. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, we're going to have such a good time. And I think I know a little bit about you, but not a whole lot. So give us an overview. Like, I know you lived in New York and then you were on the West Coast and now you're in Mississippi, but tell us a little bit about the different parts of your life that led you to where you are today.
Okay, I grew up in New York, in Westchester County. I have four siblings, and really grew up in an idealistic, if that's a word, environment. My parents are wonderful people. I'm very fortunate that they're still with us. And yeah, we all grew up in kind of a conventional way. It was assumed that I would go off to college and go on to bigger and better things. But I didn't always feel that college was going to do everything I was looking for. So actually, when I was a senior in high school, I enrolled in a school in New York City, and I actually got my degree in audio engineering before I graduated high school. And it was just assumed by me. Music has always played a huge part of my life, but I kind of learned early on that I don't really have the talent. So I figured, how else could I stay in the music business without being a talented musician? And that's why I got into audio, and that helped me a lot going through college. I became a communications major with a minor in sociology, and that part of my life after graduation and living in New York was just doing what I was supposed to do. I never quite found a good foothold in New York. I tried acting, I did voiceovers, but eventually I wound up getting a normal job. I was in the Electrical Workers Union. But my first wife and I, we didn't feel like New York was where we wanted to be. It was terribly expensive. So we started looking at other places. And what did we ultimately wind up doing? Moving to the San Francisco Bay Area, which was equally as expensive and
Right.
difficult. And that's when I went back to school again and got a degree in brewing sciences and also microbiology. And I went to work in different breweries on the West Coast. And that led me to ultimately opening my own brewery in Connecticut. So I bounced from coast to coast. And eventually I just got that up and running and sold it and decided that wasn't really something I wanted to do and moved back to the West Coast again. And my first wife passed away at that point, and I had a 5-year-old daughter. And everyone I knew assumed that I was going to pack up and go back east and be near family. But no, I liked it where I was, and I felt very confident that I could raise the daughter on my own. And that's what I did. And I wound up getting a night job working for UPS and that lasted 18 years and gave me some valuable skills. And then I was given the option of either being laid off or taking early retirement because UPS closed my entire building down. We all lost our jobs the same day. And so obviously I took the early retirement.
Mhm.
And then I was picked up very quickly by another forwarding company. And my expertise was air export. I get things manufactured here to other countries. Um, Tesla Motors was one of my big clients. And God, did I ever hate that. UPS was kind of an interesting place to work. I was there for 18 years. Once I got further into it, I started really hating life. I made a very good salary, so I was able to afford to live in the Bay Area and owned a house and raised my kids. Um, but yeah, it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then in 2007, I took, I was kind of celebrating. I bought and sold real estate as well as air export. And it was 2007, and I had an inkling of what was coming. There was too much money out there. Everybody was like, I refinanced my house 3 times in 2 years. No,
Mhm.
something's wrong there. People were
Right.
buying houses with interest-only loans. And I said, this is going to collapse soon. The bubble has to burst. And it was 2007, and I liquidated all properties that I had except my own home. And I was kind of celebrating and decided to take a trip through the South. And first stop in Memphis, was hugely disappointed by Beale Street. Then I stumbled upon Clarksdale, Mississippi, where I currently reside. And I stayed at a very unique place called the Shack Up Inn. And I spent most of the first night just sitting on a porch in pouring down rain, just looking around me, going, this is a truly unique idea. And I think it has a lot of potential. So the first morning I woke up there, I went straight to the ownership and I said, guys, this place is amazing. And they're like, yeah, we know, we built it. It's like, okay, wise ass. I said, not everybody would understand what you're doing here. Because what they essentially did was they moved old sharecropper shacks to a plantation, a very historically significant plantation called the Hobson Plantation, which is where the first mechanized cotton picker was ever used. Um, anyway, that's what they did. They moved them and turned them into nightly rentals. And I said, I said, guys, not everybody would understand what you're doing here. Some people might even be offended by what you're doing here, but I get the historical preservation you're going for, and I want to be your partner. And they responded to me. I'm not going to quote them exactly, but it was Yankee, go home. They didn't want anything to do with me.
Mhm.
Um, and it took many other trips. I started coming here 2 and 3 times a year. And eventually, like one day I was looking at my phone and I saw that I had more contacts here in Clarksdale than I had in New York and California combined. And I was like, it started to dawn on me pretty soon that this is where I needed to be. Like I said, I was living a stressed out life. Um, the shipping business was not for me. That's all about deadlines. Like every day I would come in and see a whiteboard just filled with all the shipments and the times that the plane left. And I couldn't go home until that board was empty. And so it was just constant deadlines, truckers waiting for paperwork. It was just nonstop stress. And I wanted out of that. And about 8.5 years ago, I finally did make the decision to move here. I guess I'm skipping around a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, it took me years of visiting here before they finally accepted me. And I got a call one day and said, Frank, I don't know if this means anything to you, but I figure it's worth a phone call. Um, Jim just sold his partnership in the Shack Up Inn and he used all the money to buy all the land adjacent to us. And I understand. My understanding is he's breaking off some 2 acre lots and selling them. And I don't know if that means anything to you, but I figure it's worth a phone call. I said, let me get this straight. He sold his partnership in the shack up down. Yeah. I said, and he bought all the land adjacent to you. I said, yep. I said, and he's selling 2 acre lots. I said, that's my understanding. I said, well, thank you for the phone call. I said, but I got to get off the phone. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. Did I get you at a bad time? I said, no, I'm calling the airlines. Then I'm calling in sick to work. See you tomorrow. And at 7 a.m. the next morning, I was on a flight out of SFO and landed in Memphis, drove down here, and bought property and then started building one cabin at a time. And then 8.5 years ago, I moved here and built 5 more cabins. And at the time, I never anticipated living here on the property. I started looking at houses. And like I said, I bought and sold houses for a living. Um, I quickly realized that this is the Deep South. No house here is ever going to go up in value in my lifetime. And the investor in me couldn't accept that. So I finally asked my girlfriend, I said, I've got 2 acres of land. We're building shacks. I said, maybe we should go live on our property. Maybe we should build our own house out there. And she looked at me and said, Frank, I was never going to say anything to you because it's your money. But she said, I was always hoping you'd come to that conclusion because that's going home for me. Because literally, the road you turn on in to get to the shack up in is called Hobson Pixley Road. Hobson had the plantation on one side, the Pixleys on the other. My wife is a descendant of the Pixleys. So this truly was going home for her. So I said, fantastic. That's a done deal. I said, now the only downside to this is our home on the outside is going to have to look like an old shack. I said, because that's what we're going for here.
Right.
And she looked at me and said, that's a downside. Right then and there, I knew I was going to marry that girl.
And you're
So,
married now, right?
yes, we are still married. We've been together for about 9 years now. I met her on a vacation here, and yeah, and it's been wonderful. And being an outsider here in the Deep South, first of all, because of medical condition, I can't eat meat. So I came here from San Francisco. I don't eat meat. So obviously the people around here, I'm some kind of tree hugging left wing communist fag. So um, so marrying a local girl really helped integrate me into the South here.
Right, exactly. So, how has your definition of being successful changed from the UPS days to now?
Well, my definition of success would be I'm happy now. And let me just diverge for a second. Before I left California, I sat my kids down. I had a stepson and my daughter, and I said, guys, I know you don't listen to a word I say, but give me 15 seconds where you actually are going to pay attention to what I say. I said, every day for the last 24 years, I went to a job that I absolutely hated. I went there because what I did was dictated by my paycheck. I said I had to make a good living to be able to afford this house and to raise you kids here. But now both my kids were out on their own. I said, now that you guys are on your own, I said, I'm getting the hell out of here. And what I'm trying to tell you guys is this. If you have any passion for what you want to do in life, it'd be a lot easier somewhere else, unless you're into biotech, gaming, computers, that sort of thing. If that's the case, you're in Mecca. If not, get the hell out of here and have an easier life. That's what I'm doing. And my stepson, he lives in a van. He and his girlfriend travel around the country. He's an artist and she's a crisis therapist. So she does all her work over the phone. And they've been down here 4 times now. And we're very close. And yeah, and I can see that he did the same. My daughter, she was a model, an actress, and now she's a writer for Paramount and other things. So, but she still lives in California, but she moved to the Sacramento area, which is a little more affordable. So
Mhm.
my own personal success is that I'm now happy. I'm basically retired, but I still go to work 5 days a week. I mean, I have my retirement, I have my Social Security, I have the rental income from here. So I don't really need to go out and work, but I work for friends. One of the things I do is I work in an extremely cool record store. And Diane, I know you've seen my little tour of the store before. It's mostly this area is known for blues. This is why the tourists come here. It's all about blues music. So the store is like 98% blues, 2% jazz. But everybody who comes in is happy to be there. Most of them have used our website to plan their visit. We have a really good website, and the store is called the Cathead Store. And I did get permission from the owner to mention the store and the website on this podcast.
Well, I'll
Um,
be sure. Hold on a second, Frank. I'll be sure that the link to the store is in the show notes, everybody. So you can go there and look at it because Frank gave me a video tour one time. It was amazing. Like, I want to go to Clarksdale just to go see that store live. It's just, it's breathtaking and inspiring all at the same time. So the link's in the show notes, everybody.
cool. Um, yeah, and so the owner is a friend of mine, and when I got here, I said, "Listen, I'm going to volunteer to do anything you want." He produces 4 festivals. He's directed 2 movies, 3 movies, excuse me, written 2 books. And I said, "I'm going to just volunteer to do anything you want." And he said, "Frank, what I could really use is some days off. Could you possibly come work here?" I was like, "Sure." And then I had another friend of mine that I met here, and he owns a liquor store. And he said, "Any chance you can come work a few nights for me?" I was like, "Sure." So I did that. I didn't really like it much, but then the manager of the liquor store got COVID and died. And on the way back from the funeral, I was with the owner, and he said, "Frank, is there any chance you'll take over my store and run it for me?" And let me just tell you, it, it was a really crappy store. I'll be honest. It just didn't have any diversity to what they were offering. Um, Hardly any women ever came in because he based his wine selection on like the lowest common denominator. Um, I don't know, like socioeconomically, he sold cheap wine. I said, "I'll do it, but under one condition." I said, "You listen to me." I said, "I'm going to improve your store." And I said, "But it's your money." I said, "You got to listen to what I tell you." I said, "I work there. You don't. I know what people are asking for, and you're going to stock the shelves with what I tell you to." And now we've increased sales 400% Monday through Thursday, um, between 5 and 700% Friday and Saturday. Um, it's very successful. We went from being the 7th ranked store in the city to being number 2 now. So that just gives me a sense of pride, but I really don't enjoy what I do. Um, I've been in recovery for 37 years. Um, I was never an alcoholic, so, but I don't drink because my wife is a recovering alcoholic. So I just don't bother. I was never an alcoholic, so not drinking doesn't bother me at all. Um, but that's another aspect of my life here is I'm very big in the recovery community here. Uh, I used to chair meetings like 6 nights a week. I still run one meeting on Sunday nights, and I kind of run things my own way. We are affiliated with Narcotics Anonymous, but I kind of run my meeting my way. I don't, nobody else chairs it but me. We don't rotate. It's my meeting. And that's what I do. My wife, before COVID hit, every Tuesday night, I think she went to a local rehab and she ran a meeting and just told her story all the time. And she was very popular out there. Then COVID hit, and it kind of never came back again. But I used to go out there with her, and her story was truly inspiring, particularly to women. Um, she didn't even have to tell too much. It wasn't like a traditional storytelling meeting. She would take questions, and and she's inspiring. When I met her, she was agoraphobic. She did not like to leave the house. She didn't drive. Um, I didn't think she was ever capable of working. Now, um, yeah, now she's given up drugs, alcohol. She runs her own business. She drives a car. She owns her own house, though, of course, she lives here with me. Um, but yeah, she's been one of my biggest successes. Uh, she, of course, did all the work, but I provided inspiration, I guess. And
So
like my first wife,
you love to meet people, right? And you love to network with people and be involved in all kinds of neat community things, and obviously the festivals and the story you were just saying about your wife and recovery and all of those things. Was that part of your life alive and well when you were in San Francisco and New York, or is this something that's flourished more as you've been retired and in the South? Like, can you give us a little bit of a comparison of how that part of your personality has flourished over time?
great question. I've never really thought too much into that, but no, that part of me was suppressed in California. This is something that has really flourished here. I mean, I was a member of Narcotics Anonymous 37 years ago, but after about 2 years, I got sick and tired of it. The drug abuse was behind me, and I didn't feel like going to meetings and hearing people talk about it. So I had over 30 years of not going to meetings, but then I started doing it for my wife, and now she doesn't go to meetings anymore. Um, she doesn't even do the Friday meeting where you and I met. Often she's sitting right beside me while I'm on the meeting, but she doesn't like to talk anymore. And yeah, but that's something that has flourished here. And like I said, I took a 30-year break from it, and I'm now also known, for better or for worse, when people have issues, they come to me for help.
Good.
Um, I'm working with a number of people now. You know, you know how that goes. You win
Right.
some, you lose some.
So I have a question. The Friday group that you just heard Frank refer to is an emotional support group for people in the music industry, and we're both in that group, and along with lots of other really amazing people. I love that meeting, and it's really fascinating. And so I would like you to share a little bit about your connection to music, like when you were saying, when you said in the beginning, that you did the audio studies because you knew you weren't like the musician, right? But yet you do play, and you are involved in the music world in lots of different ways. And so how has music impacted your life, and where is it in its importance today?
Impacted my life. I mean, I was the kid in high school that I'd gone attended more concerts than anybody I knew. It was always something, and I was fortunate enough to be a short train ride away from Manhattan. So I saw a lot of shows at the Palladium, at Madison Square Garden. Um, it's always been a huge factor. And playing, yeah, I still play. I never really put it down, but I really do not have the gift for playing. Now, that said, for 13 years in California, I did host a jam. It was in my backyard. I had a large fire pit. We would barbecue. We would all eat together. Then we would pull out the instruments in my backyard and we'd play. And I love that. I do miss that. Um, Playing with other people, even at my level, is just such a connection that people who don't play music will never understand. When you play music with people, you're connecting on such a soulful level. And
Right.
I thought I would easily start that up again here. I said, with all the music around, but I have been very unsuccessful with that. People here are all professionals. When I talk about a jam, they're like, "Oh, well, we can start it at this restaurant." They're looking for, and I'm like, "No, no, no. I'm talking about like my front porch."
Right,
And
right.
nobody here is interested in playing for free. The only time I get to play with people are the tourists. If I see somebody sitting on a porch that are staying with me, and I'll say, "Hey, do you mind if I pull out my guitar and play together?" And I do that on somewhat regular basis. But I see them for a day or two, and then they move on. So yeah, but yeah, music has always been, even in California, I would, on the weekends, I would work security at concerts. And like my coworkers would go, "Oh, that must pay really good, huh?" Thinking that we all made serious money. So if I'm doing this on the side, it must be, I'd be like, "No, I'm going to work for 12 bucks an hour." And they're like, "What? Why?" I'd say, "Listen, Monday through Friday, I come here to work for money. This is how I pay my mortgage. What I do on the weekends is strictly for me. I enjoy it. I enjoy being around being exposed to all different types of music. Yeah, I've had some really good experiences with bands I'd never heard of before, and I like that. I've kind of lost that living here, where we get blues music, and that's about it. Since I moved here, my wife and I have gone to like we've seen two national touring acts. They just don't come here. Um, they don't come. Memphis is our biggest city close by, and the tourists support the music scene in Memphis. The people who live there do not. I've gone to some very poorly attended shows in Memphis that would be sellouts in other places. Um, so yeah, it's that's been tough living here. Is we're definitely a one-trick pony. The tourists come here for blues, so we put on blues shows. Also, we have a music venue here at the Shack Up Inn, and there's another one right next door to the Shack Up Inn. They do music on Monday nights. We do Friday and Saturday. And I was very much involved in getting that going again. It's a long story. We were shut down for about a year. Um, and I got a friend of mine involved, and he's now running the bar for us. Um, so that's a good thing. I felt that the Shack Up Inn was lacking without live music. It wasn't the experience that we weren't giving our customers the best experience possible by not
Right.
having live music because they've
Well,
seen the website. They know that we've had bands playing here, and now
well,
they
and you're
come
in, and
and
you're
there's
in,
nothing.
and you're in this huge music venue, place where that's why people go there, and so you would think there would be live music. So it makes sense to me.
Absolutely. So I feel like we're giving the people a much better experience being able. They can go into town, go to Morgan Freeman's club, which is very popular, or they could stay here. And oh, and right now we have a very interesting thing. Last week was a harmonica workshop where people from all over the country come and they're taught by professional harmonica players.
You play
And
harmonica.
I do. And
I have a picture of you playing harmonica.
yeah, that's about the only picture of me ever playing a harmonica. But my wife took that one day while I was playing. And yeah, and this week it's guitar and bass workshops.
Oh,
And so
fun.
we get really creative people coming here. I mean, this place isn't for everybody, and we know that if you look at our website, we almost discourage you from coming here. We only want cool people, and we don't even advertise. Let me see, Shack Up Inn started in 1998. In that time, the total amount spent on advertising is $5,000 over that
Wow.
entire period. We want to grow by word of mouth.
So I have a question for you. If somebody's listening to you right now and they're probably feeling a little maybe envious or wishing that they could make the kind of leap you made to come out of this cultural container that was unsatisfactory and put themselves in position to receive something beautiful that goes along with their own vibe, their own life, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be music. It could be anything, right? And somebody's stuck and they have this fear. Do you have any advice for that person or any tips you could give that person to help them break out of that frozen box, if you will, and that can bring them to a place of being more joyful and see success as more about happiness and joy and peace than just dollars?
I wish I was intelligent enough to wave a wand and come up with a great answer to this. And I knew this question would be coming. Um, I understand that I was financially successful in life, and I did some made good investments. I did not come from a wealthy family at all. Um, what I've done on my own. So that did make it easier for me to make that jump. So I realized that, yeah, that was it was easy for me to do. But um, for your average person, please, people, do what makes you happy. I mean, don't listen. I was stuck for 24 years. I
Not
get
only
it.
that, but you weren't accepted there when you first started going there. So it wasn't like you rolled into town and they just loved you, you Yankee person, and invited you into their community. You had to work on building that relationship and that rapport and really get clear about if that's even where you wanted to be along the way. It wasn't like an overnight thing until you knew there was land and then you jumped, but you had already done all that homework and invested effort into the relationships in order to then say yes as far as I'm listening to you. Is that correct?
That is very correct.
Yeah.
And now the leap here was easy as far as I was accepted in the blues community, or as the locals call it, the blues people. The people who
Mm-hmm.
are here involved in music, the tourists who come here are viewed as blues people. So I had that connection. I had a good amount of friends, but connecting with people who didn't know me um, took some time, and I had to work at it. Now, I'll give you a funny story. I have a good friend of mine. He's retired now, but he was a political lobbyist. Like he was personally friends with Barack Obama. Um, and he came to stay with me. And there is a second venue I told you next to the Shack Up Inn. And back in the day, the previous ownership, it was seen as kind of the rowdy locals bar. And but it's at this beautiful old commissary building full of antiques and everything. And I wanted my friend to see it. But I stopped him outside. I said, listen, I said, no matter what you hear in here, I need you to be quiet. I said, I'm basically bringing you into the Republican National Convention here. I said, these are the locals. I said, they're very conservative. I said, and you're quite outspoken politically. I said, these people are my neighbors. Some of them are good friends of mine. I said, please just respect that. 5 minutes later, this guy is arguing with who is now one of my best friends. Um, Now, the place went from rowdy to dead quiet. Everybody in the bar stopped and were listening to these two guys debate. And the funny thing is, both of them are friends of mine, and both of them are incredibly intelligent. But what I would have liked is for the three of us to come sit in my living room, and I could have watched those two guys argue all night because they both were super intelligent people, but come
Right.
at things from a different viewpoint. And finally, I just grabbed my friend by the shoulder. I said, hey, we got to go for dinner now. Let's go. And we got
Right.
outside, and he stopped in the parking lot, and he goes, I did exactly what you asked me not to do, didn't I? I looked at him. I said, yeah, within 5 minutes.
Right. Short
But
order.
so yeah, so it took me a while to live that down. So once again, I'm obviously this tree-hugging San Francisco vegetarian, but it took me a little bit to get over that, and you do have to be pretty open-minded to live here
Sure.
because this country is incredibly divided now by politics, and you just have to accept that other people have different points of view, and and be accepting and be happy.
Right.
And
And all people have value regardless, whether we agree with them or not. It's not about that all the time, but we have to be willing to be open,
I like the way you just put that,
you
that
know?
everybody has value regardless. And
Right.
I would
Like
I will use that.
everybody does, like, and all in our right places. And that's why I think it's important that we follow our heart and follow our curiosity, and why it matters that we come out of the boxes of unhappiness and find where that sweet spot is for our own soul to be happy, which is what you've done, knowingly or unknowingly, as it was unfolding. That's really what you've done, you know? And you're not the only one that has done it, and you're not the only one who will do it. And all of you who are listening, follow your heart, follow your curiosity, go after it.
Yeah, I can tell you, in California, I finally at age 50 um, went to see a psychiatrist. I knew I was not handling things well. Um, at one point, my boss, who I worked with him previous at UPS and now at this additional company, he called me into the office and he said, "Close the door, Frank." I closed the door. I'm like, "Oh God, what's coming now?" He said, "Listen," he says, "I know I inherited this department." He said, "There are a lot of really lousy workers here." He says, "So I lean on you really hard." He says, "You're my workhorse." He says, "Eventually we'll replace these people." He goes, "And I want your help in recruiting new people to come in." He says, "But," I said, "Frank, you're really stressed out." He says, "I think you should start smoking weed." And I'm like, "What? Um, this is my boss telling me I should get high before coming to work?" I was like,
Right.
and I was like, "Dude, you've known me for 25 years." I said, "You know I don't do that." And he's like, "No, man, it's not like that Mexican brickweed when you were growing up." He's like, "There's good strains that are great for anxiety." And I was just like, I got up and I walked out of his office. And next thing I know, my emails start popping and he's sending me all this research on medical marijuana. I'm just like,
Oh my word. Oh
and
my
I was just
word.
like, okay. I was like, that's it. I'm going to see a doctor, and I wound up on anti-anxiety meds, and of course they prescribed me benzos, which I didn't take, um, but the pills helped somewhat. But I'll tell you what, when I moved here, I quit taking all anti-anxiety drugs.
You don't need
My
it
wife,
now.
I don't need it anymore, and my wife too. God, I had her dump out all of her medications and I went through it. And I spent the last year before I moved here, I'd quit that job and I got a job working as a security guard at a county mental health facility. And that's a whole nother story. We could go an hour about that. It was a fantastic opportunity. But so I knew a little bit about medications and I looked and I went, this is incredible. They are just numbing you. I said, "I'm going to see the doctor with you next time." So she said, "Okay." And the doctor asked her if it was okay for me to be there. And she said, "Yes, I want Frank here." I went, "What are you doing? Prescribing 2 milligrams Klonopin 5 times a day?" I was like, "What the hell are you
Oh,
doing?"
all
I
right.
was like, "You're keeping this woman a zombie." And eventually we started cutting her down. And one day she just looked at me. She said, "Frank, I'm done." She said, "I'm not taking any more medication." She says, "I'm dealing with life on life's terms." And I said, "That's a really bad idea." I said, "Because you have been on Klonopin since you were 15." I
Mhm.
said, "This is a long time." I said, "We need to step you down slowly." I said, "And we need to go talk to your doctor about this so he can medically approve this." And she said, "Okay." We went to see your doctor and she goes, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm not taking medication anymore." And he went, "That's a really bad idea."
Yeah.
Um, but no, that was it. And she had a little rough time for a bit. But no, she wanted to be like me and to be completely off all medications. And she's been quite successful at it. And her life has really changed.
I love
And
it.
we have a wonderful life together here.
I love it. That's so beautiful. So I have two final questions. to close out our time together. I have so many other things we could talk about, but I'm watching the clock and making sure that I don't suck up too much of your time this afternoon. And so my first question is, what's the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, we are friends on Facebook, so you do see that we like to cook. Um, and yeah, well, let me just say my favorite dish is shrimp and grits. And yeah, and I do my own take on it. And my wife just cooked it last week, and she used basically my recipe. Mine, also my Italian roots come out. I kind of do shrimp and grits cacciatore, if you will, because I use a red sauce, and often I will cut up onions and peppers and put it in the sauce, with some Cajun spice, and do that over grits and shrimp and blackened shrimp. Um, but my
Now I'm
most
getting hungry.
memorable,
You're making
now
me hungry.
so my most memorable has got to be pizza. I admittedly am a New York pizza snob. Um, I don't believe there's any good pizza south of the Mason-Dixon line. I got to be honest. And to me, when I lived in Connecticut, I thought the pizza capital of the world was New Haven. I thought that was some of the most interesting pizzas. I still remember the taste, the crispiness of coal fire pizza. So, yeah, for a guy as skinny as I am, I do like my food. I just unfortunately not being able to eat meat and living in the South has been pretty tough. But I am
Yes.
pescatarian. The only thing is I'm a pescatarian who doesn't really like fish. I like shellfish.
Well, there you go. There's that. Okay. So pizza. I love pizza. Good pizza anyway. So, and the last question that I have for you before we close the show is if we were going to put a billboard up that the whole world was going to see with a quote from you to help inspire them, what quote would that be?
Find your own personal happiness.
Oh, I love that. Find your
Because
own personal happiness.
because happiness is not it's not one thing for
Right.
everybody.
Right.
You've got to find your own. And
Your own personal one. And your life is a really great example of it, of the different times and different places where you've have had happiness and flourished in different ways and you haven't stopped. And that's beautiful.
well, thank you. And Diane, thank you for pointing this out to me. When you first asked me to do this podcast, I was like, what? Why me? I couldn't see that it's just my life. So I don't see it as outsiders see it. And
Well,
and I,
I
I
I
discussed it.
I knew you would have an amazing story for the show, and it was much grander than I realized it was going to be, which is even more amazing. And, like I always tell people, we can't read a label from inside the jar. So it is your life. You've lived it, you've gone through it all. And from out here, your life is very inspiring on lots of different levels. And so I'm really glad you took the time to be on the show with me today. So thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you, Diane.
So remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and find your own personal happiness, as Frank says, and live the life that you've always imagined. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Diane and Frank saying, be well.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episode's, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.